Hello everyone, today I'll show you how to use the new enhanced input action system in Unreal Engine 5. It allows to easily copy and transfer your input actions and mappings from project to project. It also has some functionalities built in that previously you needed to code yourself in Blueprint or C++. Now you have them ready just to use by picking up a drop-down. I'll show you how to make a combo action system with these new triggers functions. Let's start first by loading the enhanced input plugin. So choose the edit menu and then plugins. Start typing enhanced and make sure that this enhanced input plugin is loaded. Click the checkbox. It will ask you to restart the engine. And after you have the plugin loaded and you restarted the engine, go into your project settings, then go into the input section, scroll down and make sure that you have default player input class set as enhanced player input and default input component class set as enhanced input component. These are the new types used with the enhanced player input system. And here, all these old mappings that are set up for the basic input system you don't really need. They're actually deprecated. You should be using the new system. And it's really a better system anyway, so I'll delete all those just to make sure that we don't have anything that will just get in our way later. Delete everything, make sure you have no mappings here, and we'll create everything into the new input system. Go ahead and close the project settings window, and we'll start with creating the actions. To create the actions, just create for yourself a folder called input, and then one folder inside called actions. We'll create all our actions here, and it will be very easy to copy into other projects that you want to use the same input system. Right click here, choose input, and then click on the input action. Let's start with the move action. We'll call it input action move. This will be controlled by our WASD keys or the left thumbstick of our controller or the arrow keys, anything you want. Then I'll continue with another action. It will be the walk action. We'll control that with the mouse or the right thumbstick just to look around our character. Both of these input actions should have a type of axis 2D. When you open an input action, it has a value type selection box. It has a value type drop-down where you'll see all the pre-made types. Digital, which will be only on or off. Axis 1D will go from -1 to 1. Axis 2D will go from -1 to 1, but it will have two values for the two axes, and 3D will have, of course, 3. For movement, we want this axis 2D type because we will move forward and back in the one axis and left and right for the other axis. And also for our look input action, we want it to be vector 2D as well, because we will look up and down and left and right. Let's save everything. And let's see how to set up the keys that will control the movement and attach them to our character blueprint. Let's go into the input folder, right click, and then in the input section, choose input mapping context. Let's call it input mapping context in game, for example. This will be the context when we are controlling our character. You can create more contexts and I'll show you later how this can be useful and how to change between them. But for now, let's start with just one. In this context, you create your mapping similar to the old mapping system that was done in the input section in the project settings. Here you have the action mappings and the axis mappings. And in your input action system, you create the same mappings for the keys that were done in the old system as well. So in the mapping section, click on the plus sign and choose the move input action. We'll create the mappings for the movement of our character. By clicking here on this keyboard, you can then click the key that you want to map. So I'll press the W key now, and you can see that immediately it's automatically selected here. I'll add another mapping. It will be the S key, another one with the A, and the last one with D. These are the 4 keys for our movement inputs. And what you need to set up here is the modifiers that will control how this value is mapped to your character when you press any of these keys into this action. By default, every value is mapped on the first axis, and the value range is from 0 to 1. And if you want to change that, you need to use the modifiers section here. Let me explain what we will do here. If this is our character and we want to move in the 4 directions, we have 2 axes, one for the up and back and one for the left and right. And if we pick our 0 point to be here where they meet, and this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, our forward movement should be on the y-axis from 0 to 1. Our backwards movement will be on the y-axis from 0 to -1. Our right movement will be our x-axis from 0 to 1. And left movement will be our x-axis from 0 to -1. It's what we'll set up now into our mappings. So for the y movement, we don't want to use the first axis, which will be the x1. We want to use the y-axis. And this is done by the modifier. So click on the add element here into the modifiers tab. And you want to choose the swivel input axis values. This will move the input from the x-axis to the y-axis. So this W key will control now the y-axis movement from 0 to 1. Then for the S key, we want the same swivel input axis value, because we'll control the y-axis movement, but we want also to change the values from 0 to -1. So we want additional modifier. Click on the add element again, and then choose the negate modifier. So our W key will control the y-axis values from 0 to 1, and the S key, the y-axis value from 0 to -1 with this negate modifier. We are ready with the W and the S. The D key, which will be move right, will control the x-axis value from 0 to 1. We don't want any modifiers for this. And the A key, we just want to negate the value in order to have the values from 0 to -1. So add a modifier, negate, and this will change our values for A key from 0 to -1. This should be everything that we'll need in order to control our character movement with our 4 keys. Let's save this. And let's go into our character blueprint to show you how to use these action mappings. to control your character. I have deleted everything related to the input mappings that is coming with the default blueprints, so I can redo it now and show you how it's done. So starting with the begin play event, go into your character's event graph, find the begin play event, or if you don't have it, just right click and type begin and find this begin play event. So on the begin play event, you want to get your character controller, so right click and start typing get controller and choose this get controller function. You need to cast that controller to the one that is used by your character blueprint. So in this case is cast to player controller. This should be the controller that you're using with your character blueprint. In the case of the third person character demo scene that is provided with the Unreal, it's called player controller. So that's why we are casting to this controller. Next, drag off this as player controller pin here and type get enhanced input vocal player subsystem. Choose this. And now check if this is valid. And if this vocal player subsystem is valid, let's create a branch by holding B key and pressing left mouse click here. Connect it here. This will be the condition. So if our vocal player subsystem is valid, now we want to add our mapping context that we created with the W and ASD keys inside. So drag off our enhanced input vocal player subsystem and start typing add context, and this add mapping context function should appear. Connect it to the true statement of our branch here, and inside here into the mapping context dropdown you should select the input mapping context that we created earlier, so input mapping context in game, and this will make sure that our mapping context is used when we begin play with our third person character. So let's compile and save here, and let me show you how our values will be controlled by the WASD keys by creating a temporary event when we press any of the keys. So all the keys are set up in our mapping context to control the input action move event. If I choose this event here, and on triggered state, I'll print a string, and into our string, I'll connect this action value here. And now let's compile and save. And when I press play, you can see the top left part of the screen. When I hold the W key, I have values 0 for X and 1 for Y, because we swivel our input for the W key from the X axis to the Y axis. If I release the W key and now hold the S key, I have a 0 for X and -1 for Y because of the swivel and the negate modifiers. For the D key, I have 1 for X and 0 for Y because we don't have any additional modifiers. And for the A key, I have -1 for X and 0 for Y because of the negate modifier. Okay, let's exit from the game and go back to our character blueprint. Instead of printing our values, let's actually use them to control our movement. Let's go down here into the movement input, right click, start typing input action underscore, then move. This is our move action. And we want our triggered state, so this is what is executed every frame for the axis values, connect to the add movement input for our character. Let's split this pin. We'll use the X value for going left and right, and our Y value for going forward and backward. And our modifiers will control the range from -1 to 1 for the both axes. This will be our X axis, and forward backwards will be our Y axis. Let's compile and save. And by the way, these are the default movement functions for the third person character. You can create any additional features for your characters, but this is just the basic movement, forward and back and left and right. Let's now test this. Let's hit play. And now I can move forward and back with the W and the S keys, and left and right with the A and D keys. Let's exit the game. It's really easy to set up the input actions with the new system, and now that we have a mapping context and actions created here as a separate objects into our content folder, we can easily copy them into another project and set up the controls there. It's much better than the previous system where everything was set up in the project settings window and you could not copy it easily to any other project. Let's continue with the setup for the look action. Let's go back to our blueprint. First, actually, we need to set up here the mappings into our mapping context. Let's add another mapping, and this will be for our look action. And here, what we'll need to choose is our mouse XY axis. This will control our look action values. Let's do the same as we did with the other action. Just right click, type input action, and then look. Connect our triggered action here. Let's split this pin and use our X value for the left and right and our Y value for the up and down. Compile and save. And now if I hit play on the game, I can easily look around my character now. Now let's make one additional action, which will be our jump. So right click, input, create an input action, call it input action jump. And this time the value type will stay as a digital boolean. So it will be on or off. It will not have an axis value of 0 to 1. It will be just true or false. Let's save this. Let's open the input mapping context that we created earlier. Create another mapping. This time it will be for the jump. Click on the keyboard, click on the space bar, and this will map your jump to the space bar. Let's save this. Go into our character blueprint, and let's connect our jump input action. When we have the triggered state, it will start the jump, and when we release the key, so on the completed event, we'll stop jumping. Let's compile and save. Let's hit the play button. While I'm holding the space bar, the character is continuously jumping. If I release the space bar, it immediately stops jumping. And I'll now show you how to do combo moves instead of just the simple action commands. Let's go back into the mapping context. And for the jump, let's add a trigger. And the trigger type will be combo. When you choose the combo trigger type, it automatically removes the mapping here for the key that you have selected and creates a new mapping here inside with an array for the combo actions. Here you need to put all the actions that you want to be triggered in the order that you want them to be triggered. If we want to execute our jump action, we'll need to execute all the actions set up here into the combo actions into the order that we have specified here and into the time frame that we have chosen for each action, and only then our jump action will be executed. Let's create a couple additional actions so we can control this jump movement. Let's delete this for now so we can save the mapping context without the setup for the jump. And now into our actions folder, I'll create a new folder and call this combo actions. And this combo actions will contain all the actions that we want to use to control our combo mappings. I'll create one action for each direction with the WASD keys and one additional action which will trigger our combo if we have pressed the right directions in the right order. Let's create 4 input actions for the 4 directions. The first one will be input action up. And they will all be the type of digital boolean, so it's the default type. We don't need to open and change anything. Just create 4 actions. And one additional action. I call it input action combo. Let's save everything. Go into the mapping context. And now let's create a mapping for our input action jump. Let's select the trigger as a combo. And inside the combo actions, let's add 3 actions. Just as an example, let's say we want to have press up, then up again, and then the combo action. And for each of them, we want to have 0.5 seconds, so half a second for each of these keys. And we'll need to create the mappings for this up and combo actions. Let's click again on the add mapping. Let's choose the up. It will be our W key. Add another mapping for the combo, and this will be our space key. Now, instead of having mapped the jump action to the space key as before, we have it mapped to execute only if we press twice the up action, which is our W key, and then the combo action, which is our spacebar. Let's save this, close this window, and if I play the game, if I press the spacebar, nothing happens. But if I press twice the W and then the spacebar, I'm now executing the jump command. You can create any combos you like this way. Let's hit escape and create some additional combos just to show you how it's done with multiple combos. I'll need to add here all the mappings for the different directions actions. Down will be S, left will be A, and right will be D. I can use all these directions and the combo key, which is the spacebar currently, to trigger different actions for the combos. Let's create into combo actions, into our actions folder, additional action. Let's call it, for example, punch. And let's make a new mapping here for the punch action. Let's add a trigger type combo. And inside here for combo actions, let's add again 3 elements. Let the punch be, for example, up, then down, and then the combo key, which is our spacebar. Let's save this. Going back into our character blueprint, and let's make some code for our input action punch. Let's add a print string, and on triggered, let's write to our screen punch. Let's compile and save. And if I hit play, and now when I press front, back, up, down, and then space, see in the top left corner that I'm executing the punch action. It is writing this punch command to our screen. You can set up any additional commands in the same way, and also if you want to change the order of the commands that are executed here, you can drag the inputs up and down. So now I need to start by pressing down, then up, and then the combo key. Maybe I would like to add another element between the down and up, and it will be left. So now I will need to press down, left, and up to execute my punch command. Let's hit play. Let's hit down, left, up, then space. And in the top left, the punch command is executed. Another important thing for the enhanced input system is that you can have multiple input mapping contexts, and you can change between them in your blueprint. Let's create another input mapping context. Let's call it input mapping context special. Let's go inside and create mapping for our jump action, and the mapping will be the spacebar. Now let's go into our in-game mapping and remove our jump mapping. Now we don't have the ability to jump into our in-game mapping system. We need to have the other mapping context active in order to jump, and you can control that in your blueprint. You can add the context in the beginning like you did for the in-game mapping. I can just copy this, connect it to our enhanced input player subsystem, and choose for the mapping context the special context. That way I'll have both of my input mapping context active in the beginning. Let's hit play, and if I press the space bar, I'm activating the jump action because I have my special input context active from the beginning. But the other way you can do that is you can, for example, just add it after you execute the punch command. Instead of printing the punch string, I'll add a mapping context, and it will be our special context, and we need to add it to the local subsystem. Now, when you begin the game, you'll have only the mapping context code in game, and it doesn't have any mapping for the jump action. You'll not be able to execute the jump when you start the game. when you execute the punch input action, only after that, when you add this mapping context, you'll be able to execute the jump action. Let's compile and save and test that. If I hit the spacebar now, I cannot jump. I can move, but I cannot jump because I have my movement mappings into the in-game subsystem, but the special one contains the jump mapping. Now let's execute the punch command by hitting back, left, up, and then space. And now I should have added the other subsystem. And you can see I'm immediately able to use the spacebar for jumping now. And that way you can add and remove mapping contexts based on your actions. For example, in a fighting game, you can add a mapping context when you're in the air to execute special abilities while in the air. If you're making, for example, a skating game, when you have jumped in the air, you are able to execute your tricks, but while you're riding on the ground, you cannot do any tricks because you need to jump first in order to flip your board. Or you can have different tricks when you're on the ground with the same combo action keys set up to a different context while on ground and different context while in the air. And you start to see that the new enhanced input mapping system is very flexible and allows you to do a lot of things with very little code set up in the blueprint. Everything is handled by this subsystem. For the combo actions that we created, anything you can imagine, it's very easily done with that new system. It has other different triggers. I'll not show all of them, but most of them have very good explanations in the tooltip, so you can see what they do. For example, you can use the hold trigger instead of the combo one. And if I set it up for the T key, I'll execute the jump action when holding the T key for 1 second. Let's save and close. And when I play my game, I have only the in-game input mapping context, so I cannot jump with the spacebar. But if I hold the T key for 1 second, I'm executing the jump command. So I press T, and after 1 second, my jump action is active. Let's hold T for 1 second and release it. These triggers and modifiers types of settings into the new system are great for a variety of different actions that you want to set up. And by adding and removing contexts based on your actions, you can have different systems play at different times in your game depending on your actions, and it's a very versatile system. It's easily copied into other projects, so I highly encourage you to start using this new enhanced input action system to control your characters. That's everything that I wanted to show for today. If you have any questions, please write in the comments, and for any additional ideas for tutorials, again, write in the comments. Please like this video and subscribe, it will help a lot to continue doing these tutorials. And I'll see you in the next one.